Hello everyone, welcome back to Finch's Film Club podcast. I just want to preface this episode by saying that it is a really fun one. We had such a good time with it. However, it's been a long time since I filmed with another guest, so I had to change the recording process up a little bit from normal, and it sounds like I'm shouting the entire time. I've fixed the audio as much as I can, but it does just sound like I'm really excited to talk about this film, so I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'm sorry if there's any audio problems, but I hope you have fun with it regardless. Hello and welcome to Finch's Film Club podcast. It's the first ever episode of 2025, and I'm fairly certain it's going to be a good one, because today, everyone, we are talking about the word that you've heard, and that word, my friends, is Grease. And I'm joined by Ben. Tell everyone who you are.
Hello, I am Ben.
He's Ben.
We know each other through somebody you've had on the podcast before.
Yes. Funnily enough, my most viewed podcast.
Your most viewed podcast,
yeah.
Great. Well, let's hope it does the same this year.
Yeah.
And then I, formerly for this podcast, am the producer of a production of Grease in York at the Joseph Rowntree Theatre for 3 nights and a matinee performance, so 4 performances in the middle of February. I also produce work in theatre, I guess. In general.
He's covered a lot of bases in theatre, guys. There's a lot.
I guess. I don't want to be bigging up at
you
all
should,
because we're talking about theatre, and we're talking about Grease today. But in terms of like other stuff, currently working on a show down in London at the Southwark Playhouse, which is great fun. Done a load of stuff through my degree, which is why I'm in York. And I'm also moving to London next year to finish off and do a master's over there at Central School of Speech and Drama, which is really cool. Worked on a bit of TV, bit of film, media, blah, 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 blah. But never a podcast.
So
this is my first podcast.
First time for everything.
Yeah.
And I was thinking earlier about how this podcast, I started working on it in 2022. Yeah. And I've only done 8 episodes.
So I remember in the summer of 2023, this podcast getting me through an absolute crap job, which I was doing. I was gardening for some extra cash at home. In between first and second year, and basically every week. Well, I say every week. It's not quite.
Yeah, not quite every week. Yeah, unfortunately.
Every other week.
We'll get better this year.
I would probably listen to this, and it'd get me through my day.
Yes. Biggest fan, Ben, on the podcast.
I am
today.
big fan, and now we're chatty.
Chatty. We are
chatting.
We're chatting about Grease. Little bit of background, as we often have to do. Grease is obviously based on a stage show of the same name, featuring the love story of Danny Zuko and Sandy, who has 2 different names depending on certain things. And they meet over the summer, fall in love, reunite, and it does not go the way they expect. I would give you a spoiler warning, but it's Grease. So if you don't know what it is, it's kind of your fault. Yeah. So I believe you've got the first bit of information for us, Ben.
So the original stage version of Grease was written by Jim Jacobs and Warren Casey. Despite Grease's reputation as a classic story watched by all ages, I've got my notes. The stage version is far from family friendly. That's so true. To the extent that we've had to put a age warning on the show, which we can talk about in a minute. It was previously described as vulgar and aggressive. The original show is set in Chicago, taking place at a high school reunion. It's told in a flashback style by the character of Eugene, who is also played by one of our friends, which is really interesting.
Very exciting.
And there are tons of different versions of the story, from Danny and Rizzo going to the dance together, but also Sandy having a completely different backstory.
She does have a completely different backstory, and that is probably due to Olivia Newton-John, and we will discuss that shortly.
And we love Olivia Newton-John. We'll preface that.
Yeah. But is your show going to be vulgar and aggressive?
Great question. In terms of the level of vulgarness and aggression, I think the way that we've put the show together is in order to kind of make it as family friendly as possible. We're performing it at the Joseph Rowntree Theatre in town, and everybody loves Grease, and I think there's a level of, when you are younger, you watch the show without being privy to those
you don't know what's going on,
innuendo and stuff like that, and you don't really know what's going on, but there's a load of singing and dancing, so that's great. And so I think and it's a big thing in theatre work anyway, that if you can try and make it as family friendly as possible, it's a big thumbs up all round.
Exactly. Despite the fact that it's the movie is not as vulgar and aggressive and raunchy, some may say, the stage versions over the years post film have been pretty good at sticking to the original stage version.
Yeah, and it's
rather than
it's important,
carrying on from the movie.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah. I think ours, and it's dependent kind of on the director that you've got. Ours, I think, does allude quite a lot to the movie. That's a good or a bad thing, depending on who's looking at it. But there are elements of the movie that we've tried to include. This is a piece of theatre that is commercially produced, so there is a level of trying to make money back from it.
Obviously, of course.
As is with all theatre. And therefore you've got to kind of make sure that audiences are kind of getting what they want from the performance, and a lot of audiences will not know the original mic in hand taking the mic version of Grease that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Like me right now.
Like you right now. Like the originals that were literally microphone in hand taking the mic out of the era that you're seeing on stage. Whereas audiences today will have more of a knowledge of Danny Zuko played by John Travolta and Sandy Dombrowski played by Olivia Newton-John. So there is a level of trying to hit audience expectations in that, I think, and that's really interesting when we're putting a show together.
Yeah, very exciting stuff. Yeah, sounding very smart.
I don't think so.
No, yeah. But I'm going to talk about something which is one of my favorite things to talk about in terms of films. Casting history, or people that didn't get the role.
Yes.
I love thinking about what could have happened if someone else was like Danny Zuko or like an iconic
John
character.
Travolta.
Yeah.
Imagine.
So, it's obviously been a staple since the 70s. So a lot of people have been in the role of these iconic characters. Like Danny Zuko, Patrick Swayze, Richard Gere, and Jeff Conaway, who plays Kaneki in the film.
Yep.
And John Travolta played Doody in the show rather than
I didn't know that.
He did.
I didn't know that.
He did.
Interesting.
And originally the movie role of Danny Zuko was offered to Henry Winkler. You know who this man is? He's a very famous actor.
This is something that we're going to have to kind of preface for all of your movie fans. I don't watch movies.
He doesn't.
I'm really bad at watching movies. Like ever since getting to know yourself and also Grace, I've watched I'd never watched Jaws, Jurassic Park.
What the heck?
I'm reading from your
Jurassic
Finch's
Park.
Film Club thing over there. Jaws, Jurassic Park, Alien, I've still never watched.
Have you watched Close Encounters? We're looking at a poster that Grace got me with all of my favourite films.
Blade Runner I've never seen, E.T. I've seen, and Top Gun I've not seen, but I've seen the sequel.
Yeah.
So when you talk to me, and this is a thing that like Patrick Swayze, if you'd have spoken to me about 6 months ago, I would not have had an image in my head.
Do you know who he is now?
I do know who he is.
Did you watch
now.
Ghost by any chance?
Yeah. I've also seen the musical version of Ghost, which
of course.
is also a thing. Really? So like if you talk to me about films, I'm really, really crap. But getting better. So who is
Henry Winkler? For some reason, the only role that I can reference him in off the top of my head is he's in Scream.
Okay.
But he's the principal in the first Scream movie, I think. He dies, spoiler alert. Okay. But he's not important.
That like takes away a podcast on Scream, I guess.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah. So...
And he also was in he was like Fonzie in Happy Days, and he was like a 50s greaser in that. Okay. They offered the role to him. He said no because he didn't want to be typecast as a greaser. I think he later said that he regretted it, but not to the point where he's like mad about it. He thinks that Danny Zuko was John Travolta.
Yeah,
that is him,
I think he is. And I think looking back at it now, it such good casting. Such good casting.
And that ultimately led to John Travolta in the role. Another person who turned down Grease, and this is where we're going to come into that fact that is hidden on your script, was Elvis Presley.
He was meant to be Teen Angel.
He was.
Yeah, so I did know this. I did know this, but I don't know anything else about it other than I knew that Elvis was meant to be Teen Angel.
Yeah, and then they gave it to Frankie Avalon because at the time he was like a heartthrob kind of guy, and they were like, we need someone hot as Teen Angel. Do you want to know something creepy?
Yeah.
The day that they recorded Look at Me, I'm Sandra Dee, right? Of course, Elvis is referenced in that song. Yeah. So they've had to sing that multiple times across the day and act as if Elvis is present in the room with all these posters of him. The day they recorded that, it is on August 16th, 1977. They find out all over the news after all this time talking about Elvis. That is the day that he died.
Elvis is dead.
Yeah. And apparently the cast felt really freaked out.
Freaked out by that. No, I can imagine. Yeah.
That is the creepy fact.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So Frankie Avalon had already been cast in the role by then.
Yeah. He didn't accept it. He didn't want to be Teen Angel, Elvis. But he died on the day they recorded a song where they had to repeat his name multiple times.
Wow. Interesting.
And it really freaked everyone out.
Shocking
stuff. Yeah.
I think Teen Angel is now such an iconic role. I mean, there are so many great performers that have taken it on now. I mean, our guy who does Teen Angel is absolutely brilliant. I mean, you've seen him in Into the Woods before. He absolutely embodies it. And we've got these silver high-heeled boots that like have T and A on either side.
That's so good. That is so good.
Cool. And now that I think Teen Angel probably after Danny, Sandy, maybe Rizzo, you're sitting at probably the most well-known character in Grease, because he's on stage for what, 4 minutes, or on screen for 4 minutes, sings his song. You never see him again,
and everyone's like, "Wow, this is that one part in Grease that everyone knows," and he's just in it very briefly.
Yeah,
I think it's your turn.
Okay, before Grease even got the go-ahead, many studios had turned it down, but the movie producer Robert Stickwood, who worked on Saturday Night Fever with Mr. Travolta,
he did.
Ben film knowledge, I know, rare.
Very rare.
Thought that it'd been an instant yes if he could get Travolta to agree. Once John Travolta said yes, Paramount backed the production, and Travolta even played a huge part in recommending cast members, even suggesting Randall Kleiser for the director.
Yeah. That is, John Travolta's role in the film was not just Danny Zuko.
He's also probably like a casting director at that rate.
I'm fairly certain he might have got Jeff Conaway in, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that.
Cool.
Because he was Danny in the production that they were
that he
together.
was in as a duty.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't. This is really cool because I genuinely didn't know a lot of this stuff. So, yeah.
Good. Well, Robert Stickwood also, he had a 3-movie deal with John Travolta. So Saturday Night Fever was the first, Grease would have been the second. And because like the word they would use a lot of the time was clout, like he had enough clout to get the production to go ahead. Yeah. So he said yes. And obviously, having been in Grease before, he would have known the show.
Yeah.
And been passionate about the characters,
really
I suppose.
Easy, yeah.
And with Olivia Newton-John, they wanted her for the role, but she had only been in 2 movies before, not of like high caliber, I guess.
Yeah.
And
she hadn't been in a movie for 8 years.
She hadn't been in a movie for 8 years, yeah. And like, she didn't entirely need to get back into acting because in Australia she was like a big musician. She was reluctant.
Yeah, and she toured as a musician as well. That was so big.
This was before she was like, 80s music star as well.
Yeah.
So.
And she also, she toured in the UK in like the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
As a musician, I think. Don't quote me on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
However, I know that she kind of did like school tours, high school tours in the UK.
Bit rogue.
I know that she'd kind of like go round and see these school kids, and they'd all be like, "Oh my god, it's Olivia Newton-John!" And then she was in Grease and did it again, and then that's kind of how she then got to 80s pop star Olivia Newton-John.
That's
standard.
random. That is crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, she was reluctant. My next fact: she was reluctant to accept Grease because, and I think it's a big stickling point with the movie. Less so because I've got university students playing Grease.
The actual ages, pretty much.
But I think with the film, it's a big stickling point. She was reluctant because she didn't want to play a teenager as a 29-year-old.
Yeah.
And they had to do a screen test at the drive-in scene in order to try and convince her that it was possible to make it look, I'm not sure real's the right word, but half decent.
Convince her.
To convince her that it was right. And I think that is insane. That could you imagine the pressure you'd be under on set with Olivia Newton-John saying, "I'm not sure that I want to do this.
You've all got to make me agree to do
this role. You've all got
to
make it work." That yeah.
But I guess you also would have needed to convince her that it was satirical as well. Yeah. That she wasn't just playing like a 18-year-old because she could, because they couldn't get an actual 18-year-old to do it. So.
And it's the same with the person who played Rizzo. I mean, Rizzo was what, 33?
Yeah.
It's insane. But I think, and it's the same thing like we were talking at the start about kind of how theatre now probably needs to change a little bit to make it work in terms of audiences. We aren't able, and we've got to look at the satirical aspect of it, but as soon as you start looking at the movie, and people don't look at the movie as a satirical funny show, they look at it as Grease, this commercial enterprise, and in order to make that work in a theatre production, you're kind of sat there going, well, how can we keep the satirical aspect of the original theatre production and also elements of the film, but also make it like this all singing or dancing spectacle for audiences. And I think that kind of goes into that element of like the satire that was in there for Olivia Newton-John, and how that will have been one of the reasons that they probably convinced her to do it.
Yeah. And how you've obviously got to like really big it up, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's like, we were talking about how some of the lines sound ridiculous
They
at
do.
first.
I mean, they still do now.
Yeah, they do. But then like it works because they're being ridiculous. They're putting it on.
Yeah.
Like with the song Sandy Grace was talking about.
Yeah.
It's just funny, you know? And it wouldn't be like that if you didn't put on that.
And exactly. It's the whole whenever he sings like the word "why," it's always elongated to an extreme, and that is it's completely hamming it up to a completely different level, and I think that's probably what makes it what it is. But also, when you watch it back now, it's hilarious to watch.
It's funny.
It is funny. It is.
Right. So, as we've established, there are tons of differences between the stage and movie version.
Yeah.
But what about the deleted scenes? Because there are some very minor moments that you could kind of expect to be gone, like small interactions between characters or lines that are just like a little bit forgettable, weren't entirely necessary. But there were actually a lot of, well, there was one specific part of the film that was really iconic that was pretty much not in it for a very long time. And these deleted scenes, they did exist, but because it was back in the day, they couldn't just watch it back immediately after filming. So if they wanted to go through the deleted scenes, they would be in black and white. And those can still be found today. You can watch them somewhere. But what was deleted, Ben?
I mean, we're talking about the iconic final scene of Danny and Sandy flying away in the car, which you asked me the other day, is that in the stage show that I'm working on at the moment? No, it isn't.
Well, not the flying car.
That would be hilarious. I mean, there have been productions that have done that. I looked
Yeah.
into this. So there have been productions that on stage that have done that, which is great. And you manage to kind of get it to fly off into the wing using rope and
That makes sense.
wire and stuff like that. My budget doesn't stretch that far. However, like the iconic scene was supposed to be extended and finished with the two characters kissing as they flew off into the distance. However, there was an editing error, which meant that the scene didn't contain the kiss, and that's what we now have in the film. Like we mentioned before, the only other deleted scenes were all in black and white, so when they tried to recolour the cut section, it looked wrong and they couldn't add it to the final movie. But in an anniversary version, the scene was fixed.
Yes.
And added back in.
It was added back in. So you can probably see it, and that might be the version that you've seen. And you might be like, I did see that.
Yeah.
That is in there.
Yeah.
It wasn't supposed... Well, it was supposed to be, but it wasn't originally. But yeah, they tried to fix it, like colour grading and everything. I'm not sure if there's a noticeable difference now, if you could see the kiss scene.
I can imagine probably not, because
But like, you
technology that they've got now is to do it.
You might have been able to notice a difference in colour and be like, why is this like so blue in comparison or whatever? So there are also quite a few songs that weren't in the original show that weren't supposed to be added but were made for the movie, like Hopelessly Devoted to You. Was only added since Olivia's contract stated that she needed a solo, and they were hesitant to agree to that solo, but the song became a hit, receiving an Oscar nomination. Didn't win, but that wasn't going to be in the film.
Yeah,
and an Oscar nomination.
I mean, if you look at there's I think you'll mention probably Grease, like the hit Frankie Valli,
literal hit,
the song Grease. That those are still not, if you just get the package kind of when you're buying your rights for a production. If you buy like the bog standard package of the Grease the musical, you don't get those songs involved. And so you do need to buy extra, like the extra material from Hopelessly Devoted, Grease.
Something else.
There's another one. Sandy. Grease, Hopelessly Devoted to You, Sandy, and You're the One That I Want are used by arrangement with Robert Stigwood.
Ah. Have you contacted him personally?
Yeah, you contact the rights company, and then they tell you that you need to put that in all your marketing materials.
No way.
So as a marketing material, thank you, Robert Stigwood, for your
Shout out
contributions to Grease the musical.
Yeah, but back to the Oscars.
Back to the Oscars. Sorry.
Yeah. They didn't win for Hopelessly Devoted to You, but they were nominated for a lot of Golden Globes as well at the 36th edition of the awards for the categories such as Best Leading Actor and Actress, Best Picture, and Best Original Song for Grease by Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees. He wrote that song. You can hear him in the backing vocals, I think.
Wow, interesting.
I don't know if he was gonna sing it or if he just
It
wrote
would make sense.
I think he was going to sing it.
It would make sense because his vocal range is pretty similar.
Yeah.
Just quickly, and again, I told you at the start of this, we will tangent.
We
Have you
will.
seen the current Academy nominations for Best Musical and Best Songs?
I fear I may have done.
The fact that Emilia Perez is on there as...
And not...
and that some other things are just not on that list is an
Yeah.
absolute travesty.
We're going to go back to editing again.
Okay.
Because I did forget to write this in order. That's something I don't do with these podcasts. It's never in chronological order. It's just whatever happens, you know.
Yeah, just
and
have
I think
a
it is
chance.
your turn.
Okay, is it? Okay. So if we go back to the editing of the film, like you mentioned, there was also a few noticeable changes that the audience could spot from miles away. The scenes taking place in the diner very famously had blurred images in the background, not just blurry photos that you can't quite see, but literal posters that they had to blur out in post-production. Grease had made an advertising deal with Pepsi for the film, as you can see in the animated opening credits. Very famous, very famous. But the posters in the diner all had Coca-Cola on them, and so instead of calling all the cast and film crew back and reshooting the scenes, they chose to just blur it out. Later versions of the film have this removed, and the posters can be seen as normal.
Yeah,
which I'm sure is in the anniversary version where you can see them kids also.
Probably.
Yeah.
They did a lot of things for the anniversary version. They had a $6 million budget, and they obviously weren't going to go back and reshoot everything because they spent 15 weeks filming in the summer of 1977. At many real-life locations, like homes, parts of the city, different schools. I think 3 different schools they used. And it was insanely successful at the box office. So I guess... Actually, do you know what? If they had a deal with Pepsi and it was released at the box office with Coca-Cola posters, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that does make
probably
sense.
not ideal.
No.
Probably not ideal.
They shouldn't have blurred it out. I guess maybe they should have thought about that.
Could you imagine if you're sat in that era and you're going, oh no, we've done this deal with Pepsi. I mean, this was when Pepsi and Coke were absolutely huge in the US, and I mean they still are now. But like, if that happened now, I bet they'd probably still have to blur or work something that they CGI'd over it and put different posters up.
Yeah, but then they couldn't really do that, you know, CGI.
No, exactly,
wise,
it wasn't happening.
And the budget as well.
I guess if you did that today, there's lots of ways that you could fix it, but.
But I guess they thought, you know, it's been so long, it doesn't matter anymore. We're just going to put them back into normal. We're not going to blur them out anymore.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Contract's over.
I don't know if it's like that now, like in all versions, but like I think they did they did get rid of that blur. But yeah, insanely successful at the box office. Initially a number 2 spot release behind Jaws 2, which is a crazy choice. Which overtook Jaws 2. It overtook Jaws 2. And I'm not surprised because that film is unnecessary. Not awful.
Is
it's
it a
just
typical
unnecessary.
Sequel? Typical sequel.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Never seen it.
I think you should watch it just for the sake of, like, I would stop there. I wouldn't watch any of the other Jaws movies.
There's more?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Wow.
There's Jaws 3 and something else. I think it's got a stupid name.
Jaws Back for Good.
Yeah, Jaws Revenge. Yeah, it's called Jaws Revenge or something.
So at the time, it became Paramount Pictures' second highest grossing movie, making over £366 million. $1 million, not pounds. It's in the US. $366 million, which is an insane amount of money. Receiving great reviews from critics, although there was some negativity surrounding the look of the movie, apparently saying that it was extremely ugly. I don't agree with that.
Do not.
I don't agree with that. And I think it's got that aesthetic that is now so iconic. And at the time, yes, it may have been, it could have been seen that way. But in terms of making like a timeless film that has absolutely stood the test of time, I think, and holds everything that Grease has at its heart on the screen, I think you can't. I don't think there could ever be a remake that hits that. It's like, for me, as a musical fan, West Side Story. Mm-hmm. The original West Side Story holds absolutely everything that musical has at its heart on the screen, and it does such a good job at that. And the remake, yes, it's amazing, and they've done so well with it. But I don't think it quite hits that same, it's not a brief, but the same kind of elements of it, as so that a remake would never be able to do that for this.
In
movie.
My version of that is Jurassic World.
Yeah, no, well, I've seen that, so I completely agree.
You get it now. See, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
But
it's hard. I guess it's hard to do that.
I think some of the reason it was called ugly was because those particular critics didn't get the fact that it was satirical, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this is supposed to be like the 50s. 50s wasn't like that. It doesn't look like that either. Like, why are you making it look this way?
Yeah.
It
But
wasn't
that's
ugly,
that satirical element to it that is
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know who said it, but someone said that it was the ugliest movie musical that they'd seen, and I'm like, what the hell? Obviously, at the time, I think. Next up, where are we at? I was going to ask you what your favorite part of Grease.
My favorite part. Do
Yeah.
you want the film and the
Go
show?
for it. Let's do it.
So the film, I think Grease Lightning is so iconic.
It's true.
And although Danny sings it in the movie,
which I think that was a decision of John Travolta. Yeah, because he was like, I want to do this.
So I think that, but also I think it's the probably the most iconic part of the whole film is that opening sequence when they're kind of in cartoony style, and obviously the Pepsi elements of it.
Obviously, Pepsi's
iconic.
there. You know,
Pepsi's there. I think there's like a level of absolute brilliance to that opening sequence before you then go into the movie. In terms of the musical, my favourite number's a really rogue one. It's not in the film. It's called Shakin' at the High School Hop.
Yes, you did say this to me.
I've spoken to you about this before. Shakin' at the High School Hop is basically it's the start of Act 2, so just after the interval. And they're all going to, the dance where you get Born to Hand Jive in the movie, and you also get that in the show. But to introduce everyone at the start of Act 2, you get Shaken at the High School Hop. And it's just mint. Like, it's 50s on steroids. And
so
everybody's doing, like, this 50s dancing style. And it's so brilliant. And our version of it, I mean, our choreographer, Izzy, has done an absolutely brilliant job on the whole show. But I think Shakin' is probably, and Hand Jive are two of my favourite numbers to watch. And I could watch them over and over and over again. And, yeah, I think as, like, an element of 50s on stage, it having its moment and just enjoying it. Yeah, for sure. Shaking's is brilliant.
Well, I'm excited about that.
What about you for the movie?
Ooh, movie. My favourite.
Or the musical. Because you've done your research.
I have done my research. No, but yeah, that does look good. The choreography looks really awesome. Yeah. I did secretly see a little bit of one of the songs. Previews. I think my favourite number, you know this, I just love Rizzo's songs. Look at Me, I'm Sandra Dee's my fave. Yeah. I just think it's so much fun. The way she walks in at the end. You making fun of me, Reese?
Also, interestingly, like that number is not in the same location in the musical on the stage as it is on the film, because that takes place in the bedroom. Yeah, it's over at Finch's house because it's about the needle and my mum would kill me if there's.
Oh yeah.
Great number, amazing number. Ruby, who's Rizzo in our show, does a great job of it. Again, you've seen her perform.
Yeah, everyone in this show, I'm fairly certain I've seen them perform before, most of them, and they're all incredible. So, would recommend 10 out of 10. Go and watch. And it's not even out yet, but yeah, it's going to be good.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. What's your next question?
I guess just favourite character.
Favourite character? I do think Teen Angel deserves a shout out.
Of course. Yeah.
Hilarious. Great cameo. Great, like, starring moment to come on stage, belt out that tune, and then, or come on screen, belt out that tune. And then also just, I think I do have a tendency to always say Frenchie. Yeah, as well.
That's valid. That's totally
Frenchie's arc as a character is hilarious to me. And I think anybody who gets the chance to play the role of Frenchie is so lucky, because she's just a ball of energy on stage. And there's so much fun that comes around that, and all the Pink Ladies. Jan as well, I think, is a good role. But I think personally in the stage show, the Pink Ladies have a little bit more, not depth, because nobody has depth in Grease, but a little bit more to them in terms of like character.
Yeah, very exciting. Well, I like Kaneki.
I like Kaneki. I played Kaneki.
Did you?
Yeah, at high school.
When was this? Well,
at high school. Yeah, it was in the COVID year. So
the COVID
year. We were in rehearsals for it, and it never got put on. But I was Kaneki in that production.
Oh my god!
We had a car, and I was dancing on top of the car for Grease Lightning and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
I did love a bit of Kaneki.
There is something else I want to say, but I think it's in your notes, and I forgot where I put it.
My notes.
It was about the one and only Olivia Newton-John. I think it might have been earlier, but we just didn't talk about it. Oh yes. That one. The reason, that her backstory was changed, Sandy's backstory, is because of Olivia Newton-John's lack of ability to do an American accent. Yeah. She tried. She couldn't do it. They said, well, I guess Sandy's going to have to come from Australia.
I think, like, and that's the difference between movies and stage shows, in my eyes, is that it's really difficult on a stage show, unless we can't make, like, for example, if our Sandy could not do an American accent, you could not turn around and go, right, we're going to make a British, because that it completely ruins like the illusion that is there about looking into somebody else's life and world on stage. With film, they're always going to be able to do that because you can kind of change the backstory, and it's not no questions asked, obviously, but I think there's like an element of, we can do that because we can cover it up a little bit, change the backstory, whereas you can't just change all the material that comes beforehand to make Sandy British.
And it's like,
they met in London on the Big Ben. Like, you can't quite do that.
It's like, after all that stuff with Olivia requesting screen tests and stuff, and finally accepting it, you can't just be like, well, I guess we're going to have to go with a different actor.
You also must have sat there whilst they were doing this screen test, and she mustn't have done an American accent.
Yeah, actually, that's very true. But I guess she did have like some demands and stuff, like with the solo. So I guess they had to.
And Hopelessly Devoted is a brilliant song, a beautiful song. So
shout out to Olivia Newton-John for that.
Always shout out to Olivia Newton-John. We had a chat the other day that was like, can't believe not with us anymore. Reminds me weekly that we don't have Olivia Newton-John in this world anymore. But like, brilliant performer. Brilliant performer. Oh,
wish she was here. I think she'd come watch your show.
Do you think?
I think she would.
I think she would. Not in York.
Now we're going to talk about something which I thought was very interesting. I watched a video of Randall Kleiser, the director, talking about the way that they put together the scene for You're the One That I Want, that whole number in the film. And if you want to watch that video yourself, it is from Vanity Fair's Notes on a Scene series, which is very fun.
Good series. I've actually watched a couple of those.
Really cool. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. And Ben was amazed by this earlier when he was going over his notes, because the whole You're the One That I Want, that entire sequence was not rehearsed prior to filming.
Yeah, and it was only filmed in 20 minutes. Yeah. Which is insane.
They were losing light. Had to do something.
It's mental. And I so again, shout out to Izzy, our choreographer, and we've spoken about this to an extent. The amount of time that goes into choreographing numbers and stuff like that, I think it gives a massive testament to the talent that was in that cast of the original movie, that you cannot understate. Like, to basically put something together in 20 minutes and go, right, bang, and it'd be one of the most iconic sequences in any movie musical anywhere. Is such a massive testament.
That whole sequence, I guess, a lot of it was just made up by the cast as well. They were just like, oh, what if I do this? Or I think my character would do this in this situation. Like, you know, where they've got I don't know what they're called, like those things where you put your face in the... Yeah. That wasn't supposed to be in it. They were like, oh, because they filmed at Carnival, they found them, and they were like, what if we do this?
Yeah. I mean, it's because we've all spoken about kind of each dancer had their own backstory.
They did.
And to make it kind of more immersive for the actors to get into character and do it that way. There's a joke that is ongoing with our production, is that in the film, when you watch that, there's a guy, and he's the biggest like example of this. There's a guy and he walks around like a chicken in The Other One That I Want, and I don't know if you know the one I'm on about, but he's got really tight pants on. Watch the film and you'll be able to see it, and you can go back through and see it. And he's kind of there at the front of, when they're all kind of walking forward, he's there at the front of the group walking like a chicken, and he looks daft. But in theatre we have things that are called swings, and basically, for anybody who doesn't know, watching a film podcast, you probably will know, but like we have swings that will, it's not quite an understudy, but if a performer is ill, they know the track in order to do that role. And there's a big joke within our cast, is that these guys who have like their own backstory and know their role in this final number and have like these featured parts are all the swings for John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. So they're all swing moments where they all come forward and they know what they're doing. And I think it's interesting as well, because in theatre, one of the reasons to get into character and how you get into character is hopefully to kind of make this backstory for yourself. And it's something that our director did with our cast a long time ago, kind of making sure that people have their own backstories and understand where they are in terms of like, are you a cool guy? Are you a nerd?
Quick pause. You may have noticed Ben's audio quality change a little bit there. That has nothing to do with either of us. Sometimes technology just does not have a good day, and it plays up right at the end of recording when everything was going so well. So unfortunately, towards the end of this episode, that microphone just didn't work. So I've tried to deal with it again. And I hope it's okay. Because you can see them, I think, in the background of a lot of shots. And it was also the fact that they didn't want them to look like they were just there for dancing purposes, you know? Extras, if you were going to see them multiple times, it makes sense for them to have something going on. Yeah. So they did that, which was quite cool. Yeah. And then another thing about that number, because there is just so much, is that it was filmed on an extremely hot day, and they were obviously losing light. If you look at the bit where it cuts to Danny after he looks at Sandy's like transformation outfit, it's darker behind him
compared to the shot before.
Yeah. You will definitely notice that now that I've pointed it out, so I'm sorry. Olivia Newton-John was squinting a lot because their sun was coming in from that direction. They had to put a massive piece of like silk up and put it in front of her face so there was no sun in her eyes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because otherwise she would have been like smiling and like completely squinting the entire song.
Yeah.
Do you imagine?
As well as the thing about the cigarette that we've spoken about.
Yes.
Which is that the cigarette kept bouncing away from the spot that they wanted it to land in, so they put a bobby pin within it when she does the tell me about it, stud.
Tell me about it, stud.
Yeah. Throws it on the floor, and in order to make it land in the exact correct position, they put a bobby pin inside to weigh it down, which I think is great.
That is great.
In terms of a production nightmare and having to create cigarettes with bobby pins in them, awful. But in terms of creating like a solution to a problem within 20 minutes worth of filming, fair play.
So yeah, but that's pretty clever for 20 minutes worth of filming.
Yeah, exactly. And when we're talking about all these things that happened, could you imagine how hectic that film set would be?
Yeah.
Like the amount of stuff that's going on in 20 minutes time.
Yeah, man. But
people coming up with random dance moves and what their character would do.
Yeah, that is crazy. There's a lot to manage.
Mr. Clydesnoble will have had a very hectic 20 minutes.
There were obviously a couple of things that they had to reshoot. They didn't want to because they only had 20 minutes. But the entire that dance was filmed on like a Panavision camera lenses, so they were like big wide shots, and they obviously wanted like to cut in and do close-ups and everything, but they couldn't do that because it looked weird when they'd zoomed in and cut in or whatever, and they couldn't really do that with the type of film it was in the 70s. So they had to reshoot the bit where they're on the you know that I don't know what it's called, the part of the carnival where they're holding onto the bars at the back. There's like some dancers holding onto the bars and they're running up and down the little, I don't know, but they reshot that, and you can see the difference in the close-up shots because they had to recreate that on a soundstage. They didn't want to do that, but
I think the other thing about that number that always sticks out to me is Rizzo's jacket that she's wearing.
Yes, that's such a great point. That's very
cool jacket. And we've kind of taken inspiration from that for the Pink Ladies jackets in our show. That all the Pink Ladies have their names stitched onto them in ours, whereas I don't think in the movie they do. They just have the random the kind of the generic Pink Ladies, and then Rizzo has her name on it at the end. We've kind of done it so that they have the labels on all the way throughout, because I think it's such an iconic look from that final number.
Yeah. I agree. That pretty much wraps up a lot of our very interesting information on Grease, the movie and the show. Yeah. But if you want to give your little show a little bit more promo.
Do a little bit of a promo. So Grease is in performance at the Joseph Rowntree Theatre in York between the 13th and 15th of February. That is the Thursday, Friday and Saturday evening, as well as a 2 p.m. showing on the Saturday. Tickets are selling really well. We've got about 300 tickets left to sell. We're about 75% capacity at the moment, which is really, really great. If you would like to buy a ticket, please go to the josephrowntree.co.uk/Grease, and that will take you to the ticket link, I hope. And a special promo code for podcast listeners, which I don't know why we're doing this, but we will do this. There is a special promo code for podcast listeners, which is Grease Stud. That's Grease Stud, all in capitals, all one word, and that will get you, I think, like a little bit of money off your ticket. Which
this is great.
Which is nice because you've helped us with the marketing for the show, as well as just me having a nice afternoon chatting about Grease. As well as that, if you want to follow the Instagram, that is at CHMS Feb Show, and you'll be able to find that on Instagram, Facebook, and I think TikTok.
Ooh.
If not TikTok, it's at CHMS York, and you'll be able to find it on there, a bit of content on there as well. Yeah, very exciting stuff. If you can, keep up with the production as it's going along, or like as they're getting to the performance. If you're in the comments and you want to send some comments, send the Finch's pod.
Yeah, comment down below, guys. Send us some love.
Send some love on the Grease page as well. Give us a little shout out.
Rebecca sent me here.
Yeah, Rebecca from Finch's podcast Finch's Film Club podcast sent us here.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely do. And we'll be doing this, like clips of this will be out on the Instagram in the next week or so, and all our socials as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Ben, for
worries.
joining me
Oh,
today.
good.
Very fun. I
Yeah.
had a really good time.
I'm glad.
Good.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Cool.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.